Oh, especially not giving a sermon, so it's a bit scary to come back, but I'm very glad to see you all and kind of have a chance to be here. So, yeah, let me introduce myself. I think as I was wandering around, there's a few faces I haven't seen in a while and a few faces I don't know so much. So, my name is Matthew Jubb. My parents are Chris and Carol Jubb. I have 5 other brothers and sisters, which all kind of look like me and get mistaken for me. So, I'm 29. I was blessed to Nancy Makita, who's an American, in 2004. So it's quite a long time ago now. It's getting a bit scary.
Where's Nancy?
She's at home looking after the kids. So I have 2 daughters that are a lot of trouble and joy at the same time. One's 3 and one's about 7 months. So they're a little bit difficult to drag around to central London. So I think Nancy's watching me on Ustream. She can be embarrassed at home. So that's quite tough. I work full-time as a programmer in a big evil bank. So that's quite long hours and can be a bit stressful. So... Yeah, a little bit. They're not too bad. Yeah, it's a lot about money, but I feel that there's some good people there. And I wouldn't want to be in a place that's kind of overly materialistic, even if we are dealing with money. So that's somewhat difficult. Life has got a lot more busy. Childcare, I mean, parents again know this already, and, they work, but you don't really realise how difficult it is until you kind of try and manage all of that and try and pay the rent and all these kind of difficulties that I'm sure many of you younger people are yet to kind of fully be exposed to, but it will happen, don't worry. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I want to talk about something that's very simple, actually. You might almost say it's obvious, but I hope that by putting in a context that's kind of that I've been going through, it might have a kind of greater meaning or kind of additional meaning. And it's kind of like a testimony because this is something I've been thinking about a lot over the last few years. So because I'm kind of one of the older people that have grown up in the church that are kind of still around and still come to Sunday service, I kind of feel a little bit of a responsibility to be thinking about, where are we headed as the young people, and I kind of talk about it to a lot of people. It's kind of, I often think, well, where are we going to be in a couple of years, in 10, 20 years? I don't know if anyone else thinks like this, what's really going to happen? Is the church just going to be like this? Are there going to be more of us? Are there going to be less? Are we going to be younger in average or older in average? Is the average age just going to keep getting older? There's a lot of these kind of questions. And, I think it's kind of good that we think like this because it shows that we care, right? If we didn't really care, if you just turned up to 1 or 2 things that your friends were going to, you kind of might have got blessed, you might not have, if you're just thinking, well, that's what's in it for me, then maybe you won't think like that. But I think it is good to kind of think as a community about these kind of questions. The way I kind of started to think like this is that I went to a lot of workshops, as probably a lot of people my age did. I went to SDF for 2 years, travelling around. And then I kind of came back to do university. And a lot of that was quite easy. I didn't feel as busy and as stretched as I do now because it's kind of just me on my own. But once you're in a kind of family environment, you've got so many other responsibilities that are not about yourself, then you definitely feel like you're kind of stretched out a bit. I don't know, do you kind of feel like that? That you kind of, once you had kids, because it was less about you, it was more about your family, that it was kind of like a greater expanse. So, yeah, I mean, there's one quote I want to refer to. I want to read a lot from one of the peace messages that Father gave, the value and significance of the family pledge. So at one point when Father's talking about Pledge 3, he mentions, blessed families should strive every day to advance this goal. So he's talking about the goal of Pledge number 3, which is the one about 4 great realms of heart, the 3 great kingships, basically how you love your family. However, it cannot be fulfilled with only a theoretical faith. Where you think that you should be able to fulfill your goal simply because God does it in such a way, this is a practical matter and is set right before your eyes. So being a parent, it's suddenly very practical, with changing diapers and all sorts of things. And it becomes so much more real than it ever has, and that's been my experience over the last couple of years. Everything that has mainly been theory, to be honest, a lot of things has suddenly become very, very real and in a much more stressful and much more kind of way that you have to deal with it. You can't just kind of put it off, procrastinate. You really have to deal with it right there and then. So this kind of step up was new to me. I've also been thinking a lot when I was preparing about this, how because of this step, my parents are also taking a step up to become grandparents. And it's only really hit me in the last couple of days, but I'm wondering how much of a kind of extra challenge that is to our parents, to suddenly become grandparents. I mean, the cynical part of me kind of thinks that must be so nice. You can kind of just look after them. Once they start crying, you hand them back, But Father also talks about grandparents being in the position of God, and surely anything when you're in the position of God has got to be difficult, right? So, I was thinking about how it must be difficult to kind of see your kids make the same mistakes as you did when you were raising them, all these kind of things. So I think we're all at a point where we're kind of moving this next step up together, parents as becoming grandparents and kids becoming parents. So we're all in this position where we're kind of taking a step up and kind of wondering, what's this new level about? And so because I've been working and kind of stressing about those kind of things, and not being able to go to workshops and not being able to kind of be free to kind of do what I want, it's become a lot more... I almost kind of got a bit depressed because I was like, well, the only thing left for me is Sunday service. In some ways. I know this is not strictly true, but I kind of felt that at some point. And Sunday service has always been the thing I dislike the most. I'm sorry. Maybe it's not the best thing to say at a sermon. Not dislike, but it's been a little bit more difficult for me to kind of always get something valuable out of it. Going on a workshop and kind of doing things and spending time together for days on end, or kind of going off in a van, it's a bit more kind of active, So I was getting a bit scared that, for the next couple of decades, that's all I'm going to be doing. I don't really have much time, especially at this moment, to go off for a week to a workshop because Nancy needs help looking after the kids. I can't just do that to her. So that made me think about this question of where we're headed, where am I headed, what's the future going to be. And I think it's also kind of interesting because as a movement, we're asking a lot more questions. Don't know if you get that sense as well, that people are kind of questioning things a bit more and kind of saying, well, where are we as a movement, as a community, and all these kind of things. You might be cynical and say, well, that's because so much drama has happened and we're kind of being skeptical and cynical. But I take it a bit more positive to think, well, maybe we're just thinking, actually, it really rests on us, and what can we do to make it better? Rather than kind of expecting some kind of leader to fix things or guide us to the right way. So I see it a bit more with that perspective. But of course, that's much more scary to kind of think everything rests much more on us. So I would hope that as we grow up, especially people in my shoes, as we grow up, we kind of think about this a bit more. It's kind of, we've always talked about kind of second gen taking over eventually, but it's been a bit of lip service. I think at some point it is going to become real because eventually our parents are going to pass away. That's the reality, and we have to now that I'm in my parents' shoes of being a parent and kind of thinking about what am I going to leave my kids, it's become a lot more real, a lot more real. So I was talking about kind of getting a bit down by this question and kind of, I was wondering, what has Father really asked me as a person to do? What kind of legacy is he kind of expect me to continue? And it's become quite difficult because I'm thinking, well, are we really living up to what he's expecting, what he kind of left us, and all these kind of questions? It's that I felt that quite a lot, and kind of I was really questioning for a while. How do I really make sense of this? Should I be trying to make our communities bigger? Well, I don't really like witnessing. I kind of find it difficult in its classical sense. I think we all struggled with that. Kind of bring this many people to this event or whatever. I find that difficult. So I really wanted to try and just find a core that I could come to that would guide me for the next few years. So whenever I went to workshops or SDF, I always realized this was a kind of temporary circumstance I was in that would eventually disappear, right? When you go to a workshop, it's all, hey, great. And then you come home, and unless you've taken something away that stays inside you, it disappears as soon as you drive home. So you have to kind of find that core that stays with you that nothing else can touch, right? So for me, when I was growing up, I can say for 100% sure that was when I discovered I kind of realized in my life the realness of that I'm God's son. Right? That's something that nothing could take away from me, and that I didn't need a workshop to really kind of know for real. That was a truth that was staying with me. But so I was looking for a kind of core like that, something that I could kind of use to guide me for the rest of my kind of being a parent life. So, I mean, of course, Father has a lot of words. You can spend months researching a particular topic. That was a bit much for me. I don't. Maybe if I really invested, I would find the time to really study to that level of kind of. But I found something much more simple, which was the pledge. So the pledge is something special because it's been around for a while. It's not something that changes that often. I know it does get tweaked, but it's always been there. I want to actually kind of read something that maybe the younger ones amongst us don't remember so much. So, who remembers reciting my pledge rather than family pledge? So that was about 20 years ago that we stopped doing that on a day-to-day basis. So Father, when he inaugurated Family Federation in 94, so 19 years ago. Oh, it's a long time ago, isn't it? 19 years ago, he introduced Family Pledge. There was Pledge of the Families, which was kind of a bolt-on to my pledge, but that was the kind of main transition. So I want to read you some of the language that's in my pledge. So my pledge number 3, as a true son or daughter, I will follow our Father's pattern and charge bravely forward into the enemy camp until I have judged them completely with the weapons with which he has been defeating the enemy Satan for me throughout the course of history by sowing sweat for earth, tears for man, and blood for heaven, as a servant but with a father's heart, in order to restore his children and the universe lost to Satan. This I pledge. So it's quite different, right? I will charge bravely forward into the enemy camp and I will judge them with weapons. It's quite different to family pledge. And then at the end it will say, it goes on to say, I will fight with my life. I will be responsible for accomplishing my duty and mission. This I pledge and swear. And then we would say, this I pledge and swear 3 times, which is, it's quite strong language. I think in order to read that, you kind of have to, it definitely helps me to understand the mentality that our parents had 30 years ago a bit more. I think it's also kind of rooted in, it definitely sounds more Korean to me than family pledge. I don't know if maybe that's a bit, what's the word? Maybe it's not true. That's the feeling I get from it. Koreans are very strong and kind of that kind of attitude. I can imagine how that would kind of get the troops kind of ready to go out and kind of save the world. But it is much more kind of, it's much more army-like, right? Armies are kind of, yes, sir, I will follow, just tell me the order. Family Pledge is much more about your responsibility and you kind of being the ones, the central person, the tribal messiah and all these kind of things. So our kind of focus moves on with the times, right? And it's never a change. I mean, if you look at the core message, he still talks about kind of loving and being filial to our heavenly parent, and kind of bringing peace to the world. It's different language because it's in a different context and a different time, but the core message is still the same. And when I was reading this and kind of thinking about how we move on and how we progress like that, I was thinking about my work, because I recently got a promotion. And I was like, okay, well, what's different now? And my boss was like, well, nothing really. You're just going to keep doing the same thing, but better. I was thinking, something major would change and I'd be doing a different job. No, it's exactly the same job, just to a higher degree with a broader scope. I kind of see it in that same way. So, yeah, we move on to Family Pledge. And through reading that peace message that I mentioned, and through actually reading Family Pledge in a setting that wasn't 5 a.m., I started to look at it in a different way. So, maybe I'm the only one that felt like this, but whenever I would read Family Pledge, because it was kind of as part of a group and you kind of do it so automatically, you don't take time to really study what the words are saying. But through reading that peace message, I really kind of started to think differently about it. I'll read you a few paragraphs from that peace message. The fact that we now have the Family Pledge is truly the greatest of all blessings. It came from heaven as a gift to all humanity on May 1st, 1994, the day when the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification was inaugurated. The Family Pledge was given when the completed Testament age, which brings the fulfillment of the Old Testament age and the New Testament age, was proclaimed. It is to serve as a milestone and guiding principle, piercing through the darkness of the age before the coming of heaven, and opening a new heaven and earth in the era after the coming of heaven. It is also the blueprint for the building of God's kingdom of peace and unity in heaven and on earth in the era of the creation of a new heaven and earth. Father and Mother Moon, the true parents of mankind, emerged victorious from the battles they had fought throughout their long course of indemnity that lasted 40 years. After Father Moon founded the HSA UWC in 1954, on that foundation, we were no longer required to recite my pledge as individuals. We were to recite and practice the Family Pledge together as true families, the basic units of the triumphal entry into the kingdom of heaven. So I was kind of starting to think, well, okay, this is the thing that can kind of guide me. I'm not going to see Family Pledge as just something I'm reciting. I'm going to use this as the kind of core thing that can help me work out how I'm going to survive in my new role as a parent, as a family, as a kind of working person that has very little time. That was my new core. And I suddenly started to read my pledge in a totally different way. Instead of a kind of list of jobs, I saw it as a really joyous message, all about how much love we have to enjoy and have to give in our life. How many different things we have to be grateful for and how many possibilities we have to kind of experience love. That became my kind of core takeaway from the pledge. And I think especially the ability to truly appreciate every single person that's in our life. Especially when you come to Sunday service and we're in our communities, I think one of the reasons why I found Sunday service difficult is I didn't truly appreciate how lucky I was to have the people around me, how lucky we are to have each other. You know, we always talk in the church about, you know, it's great to have great people, and this is one of the reasons why I stick around. But it's really so true. You know, we have such an amazing community where each one of us is striving to be better people. You won't find that very often, you know, and we should make more. I should be more grateful for it and make more use of it, you know, because when you're with people that are working towards a common goal, there's much more capacity to kind of reach that goal, you know, for yourself. You know, when an example of that would be if you're trying to study for exam, it's so much easier when you're studying with other people, right? They kind of bounce things off you, and that's one of the values that we have here, that we're going in this same journey together. So I want to share kind of my take on Family Pledge and how I kind of, you know, I think when I was preparing for this, I was very aware that everyone's going to take away different things from Family Pledge and from anything that Father says. You know, there's different emphasis that are applicable to us in different ways according to our family situation, our personal situation, and whatever. So I was looking at number 1, our family, the owner of Chungaguk, pledges to seek our original homeland and build the kingdom of God on earth and in heaven, the original idea of creation. So my understanding of that is our main goal. It's almost like that's the kind of, it's the reason it's number 1, for sure. You know, that's, Father talks about the original homeland as basically the result of us having great families, great nation, great communities, that building up, that's our homeland. You know, when all of our kind of ideals are embodied not just in our heart, but in all our hearts, and how communities and society functions like that. And then my take would be that the others are kind of how we accomplish that. You know, in the different aspects of our life, what we need to do to make sure that that first one happens. So the second one, our family, the owner of Chungaguk, pledges to represent and become central to heaven and earth by attending the heavenly parent and true parents. We will pledge to perfect the dutiful family way of filial sons and daughters in our family, patriots in our nation, saints in the world, and divine sons and daughters in heaven and earth. So, for me, that's almost kind of like that core that I was talking about before, that we are sons and daughters of God, you know, in a loving relationship where, you know, we can feel the love of God, that he is guiding us in our lives, and that we must be kind of devoted to him in order for that to happen. You know, of course, it's much bigger than that, and that's why it kind of takes on this kind of patriots in a nation and society and world. But for me, I just took away that core thing of, I am God's son, and I need to live that in my life. Number 3, our family, the owner of Chungaguk, pledges to perfect the 4 great realms of heart, the Frigate kingships, and the realm of the royal family. So when I was reading that and kind of looking at Father's words in that peace message, that's just about family and how we love our family. How we kind of, the 3 great kingships is, you know, it's quite theological, but it's about how I have parents that are now grandparents. I have children who have parents, you know, and all those different relationships that exist there. The 4 great realms of heart is all those different levels of love that we've kind of talked about so much. It's you know, and because I'm now a parent, this all became so much more joyous, you know, because being a parent isn't that bad, actually. You know, I don't want to scare you, Alex. It really is it's joyous, you know. There's moments at which you can kind of just cry with happiness at what your little daughter has done and how she treats you, you know, or just cry with laughter because she comes up with so many funny things, you know. It's you know, I think every time we read this, even though it's expressed in quite a theological way, we always have to attach it to the reality of how much love we have to enjoy and give. So number 4, our family, the owner of Chongaguk, pledges to build the universal family encompassing heaven and earth, which is which is the heavenly parent's ideal of creation, and perfect the world of freedom, peace, unity and happiness by centering on true love. So, I'm not going to go through all of them, don't worry. That's the last one. So, that to me is about how we kind of love each other in society, how we embrace all our differences, all our different cultures, all our kind of different circumstances. When Father talks about this paragraph in his speech, he talks about ending poverty, you know, and how we kind of, we're the Good Samaritan, you know, that doesn't let someone on the side of the road just stay there. You know, and that's the only way that we can kind of bring about peace and freedom in our world, you know. So the other ones go on into different aspects of our lives, and to me, to be completely honest, I haven't yet completely digested those. You know, I think they're in a bit more of a grander scale. Unification of spirit world and physical world, you know, it's a bit, you know, it's the next step up, right? So when as a result of my kind of questioning and my kind of turmoil about, you know, where am I headed in my life and kind of how I'm going to deal with the next 10, 20 years and kind of coming, you know, thinking about the responsibility I have as kind of carrying on True Father's kind of legacy, my determination is that I'm not going to get bogged down in kind of feeling the things I haven't done, or the kind of, am I being active enough in my community, or am I bringing such and such a result, you know, am I fulfilling this and that goal? I think those are important, but you shouldn't ever see them as the first step, or even the 5th step, you know. Family pledge and the things that are contained in there, the love that we have between each other and that we have to develop, is the first step. And I do believe that if I can master that one and enjoy it and kind of be happy from it, the other things will follow on. I don't think we can ever kind of go to someone else and preach something that hasn't given us joy, right? It's very hard to kind of, you know, advertise something that is miserable for you, or that you feel is kind of not really working. You know, that's the reason why we have to kind of concentrate on these things and see them as, you know, I think one of my mistakes in all of this is that I just haven't studied Father's words enough. You know, I've kind of been kind of too preoccupied with these other questions about our community and kind of, does the church exist, and these very kind of resultant things to Father's core message. You know, it wasn't his main aim to create a church and kind of create events and give speeches. You know, his main goal was for us to live in this family way. You know, that we can love each other and know how to love. So that was my kind of conclusion, and something I've kind of realised lately. And I do think this will keep me busy for the next decade or two. You know, so after that we'll see how I go. But I think there's enough here for us to take note from when we recite it each week or whatever, and actually kind of think, how does that really apply to my life? And I do think it will make us really grateful for our communities. I recently had a really nice experience when I went to the Holy Wine ceremony that was kind of part of the build-up for Foundation Day. So when Franklin kind of asked us to get into families and kind of hold hands, people like me and Kenta were like, do we stand with just our couple, or do we stand with our parents? You know, and everyone did it kind of differently. But I was like, this is my family, not just my daughters and my wife, but my grandparents as well. And it was quite nice for us all to hold hands together, you know, a little 3-month-old and a 55-year-old all together. I felt really proud of us doing that as a community all together. It was really nice. And it just made me realise how precious we all are. And I think I've for many years I've taken that for granted. You know, it's quite easy when you're so busy to come, and then there's always going to be someone in your community that you kind of find a little bit more annoying than other people. You know, and that's part of appreciating our differences. Not everyone's going to be like you, and you can't take it for granted because they've been through a lot. Everyone's been through a lot, but we're still here and we're still trying to love each other the best we can. You know, I think we should really be grateful to each other for that, because someone else dealing with their difficulties has value to you as well. It's not just them. It's us all striving for the same thing that gives us kind of value as a community. You know, it's not an individual thing. It's not a family thing. It's greater than that. So I hope that wasn't too conceptual or kind of unpractical, but that's kind of things that I've been thinking about and has helped me kind of deal with those questions that I've been having, that we really just have to never forget the basics and never forget those core messages that we've got, and don't get kind of drowned out in kind of the superficial things. You know, never forget that core. Yeah. So please join me in prayer. Dear, most beloved Heavenly Parent, we are so, so grateful for the love that you have given to us, and that we have so many opportunities to experience it every day. Our hearts have an amazing capacity to forgive, to appreciate, to share joy amongst us, amongst our families and our communities. And this is really a blessing that's been given to us in the form of family pledge, that we have been kind of shown the light of how each aspect of our life really has meaning in bringing the joy to you and establishing your original ideal. Father, we know that we fall far short of your hope, but we hope as you as a parent can forgive us and still embrace us, as we know you do every day. We want to really be grateful for the time we have to share as a community after service, and really the support that we get throughout the week from each other. We're grateful, and we want to report all of this in my name, Matthew, the Judd family, Blessed Central Family. Arju. Thank you.
Yes. So please stand up, and we can sing offering song. If life were gracious enough.
If life were gracious enough to burn
Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, true parents, please accept these offerings given this morning from the hearts of everyone here. We are very grateful we could have our Sunday service today, and we could gain so much inspiration for the week ahead. We thank you for these very inspiring words from our second generation brother, and we pray really we can keep these words in our mind and hearts for the week ahead. We ask you to be with us, and that we can really feel you guiding us, Heavenly Father. We give our thanks to you this morning. I report in the names of everyone gathered here today, and in the names of Anne Kobayashi of a Blessed Central family, Jew.
Great. Thank you very much for coming. Please, take a seat. Thank you, Matthew. I personally felt that there was something very important for me in that message, and I hope you feel the same way. And let's have a great week. And I invite you all. I think Grant prepared lunch. I saw him working hard on that. So there's going to be some lunch downstairs, and let's practice the family pledge and live a happy life. So thank you very much. Have a great week.
There's distance in the air, and I cannot make it leave. I wave my arms round about me and blow with all my might. I cannot sense you close, though I know you're always here. But the comfort of you near is what I long for. And I can feel you. I have learned to reach out just the same. And I can't hear you. I know you still hear every word I pray. And I want you more than I want to live another day. And as I wait for you, maybe I'm made more faithful.